How dirty can I get?
Go as dirty as you want to go.
As dirty as I like. I'm Imaginatrix. I am a pro-dom erotic hypnotist. An erotic hypnotist is someone who uses hypnosis to enhance, change erotic play in some way. So it could be a sensual kind of play, sensation-based play, or it could be something more BDSM based. It could be someone with a mind control kink, or it could be used to enhance other sexual and kinky activities. So I started off in the scene. My first love was shibari, rope, bondage, power exchange, and then I got to discover hypnosis more as a way of expressing my power kink. But now I'm just massively into hypnosis in and of itself. That's not everyone's experience. A lot of people have a hypnosis fetish from kind of a young age, in the same way that some people have like a bondage fetish from a young age.
What got you into hypnosis specifically?
I had a play partner who was a hypnotist, and we were doing other BDSM activities, impact play, power exchange, orgasm control type stuff. And I knew he was a hypnotist, and I was interested in seeing where that could take me. And then pretty much from the first time he hypnotized me, I was a natural subject. It was very easy to hypnotize. And from the very first time he hypnotized me, I was like, this is amazing. This is telling me so much about my own mind. It's changing the experience to make it so much more immersive for me. It's something that you can do from anywhere with just your voice, no tools needed. And that was it was instant, like, kink unlocked. I need to do more of this. So that's how I first got into it as a subject. And then after a few months, I was kind of reading about it, practicing with him, and then soon enough I was feeling confident to hypnotize people as well.
When you say you're easy to hypnotize, can you break that down a little bit for me?
So most people are easy to hypnotize. And actually, the idea of someone being difficult to hypnotize is usually just because they haven't found the right technique for them. But I think I had an assumption from the beginning that it was going to be very successful for me, that I was going to be hypnotized. I already had this relationship of power exchange with the person who was hypnotizing me, so there was quite a lot of trust and rapport in that relationship. And I just really believed that it was going to go well. And that's almost the fundamental basis from which you can have a hypnosis scene that's successful. You really believe that it's going to go well for you. So you can play with resistance as part of hypnosis. You can actively tell a subject to try not to let you hypnotize them, which invariably leads to you hypnotizing them, because the more you try and push something away, the more you find that thing appealing. I've had people who it takes a few different techniques before they find something that is comfortable and something that gives them that feeling of being hypnotized. But often it's about framing successes. So you might have a total success when you hypnotize someone, and it's just the whole way through everything feels like it's all the suggestions you're making feel like they came from outside of them, and they feel all the suggestions very strongly. Or you might have someone that just feels it a little bit to begin with, and then has to go, well, I felt it a little bit. That was a positive. And the next time I know I'm going to feel it even more. So it's kind of about framing successes often, if you're someone who perhaps is a bit more analytical in your approach to things, or maybe has some reservations, or often people who are quite anxious or check in with how they expect that they would feel, because obviously expectations can get in the way as far as what is actually happening right now. So if you're someone who had a lot of expectations and you're constantly worrying whether you're hypnotized, am I hypnotized yet? Am I hypnotized yet? Am I hypnotized yet? That's going to make it harder for your own mind to relax into the process of being hypnotized.
Could you draw a line between clinical hypnotism, erotic hypnotism, and what most people have probably experienced of hypnotism, which is like stage hypnotism? Where do you sit within that?
So I suppose technique-wise, if you break it all down, we're all doing the same thing. It's really about what kind of attitude and flair you're bringing to it. I'm not doing anything different technique-wise with someone's mind than a therapist would be. A therapist might draw more boundaries around what they're doing. They might specifically not be tactile, and obviously they're mostly doing it toward a particular goal, which is therapeutic, which is not my goal. I mean, I do a lot of stage hypnotism style things. I suppose the main difference would be a lot of stage hypnotists are working with a big group and then trying to find the most easy to hypnotize people in that group, sort of narrowing down to the most easily hypnotized and then trying to get the biggest effect that is most visual from that group of people to entertain. I'm also trying to entertain, but my love and my purpose is the experience of my subject. So it might not always look to an outsider like much is happening if I'm playing with someone, but as long as it's happening in their head and as long as it's satisfying for them and for me, then that's a great scene. I learned hypnosis mostly from, I'd say the key way I learned was from being hypnotized. So I started as a subject, and the experience of being hypnotized, I have quite good recall in trance, and I've always had a good memory for words. So I learned the kind of patter just from being relaxed and listening and enjoying the experience of being hypnotized. And then I got books. It's important to hypnosis is the sort of thing, if you're going to play with it, if you're going to dabble around in other people's minds, you should be educated. So there's a great book by Mark Wiseman, I think he goes by Wise Guy in the scene, called Mind Play, which is an often recommended as a beginner's book. Here are the ethical concerns, here's the way that you can frame suggestions, here's the way that you can do patter, here's some ways that you can play with hypnosis. Some more clinical hypnosis books as well, that are a great one by Richard Nongard. It's something really like how to influence anyone you want with hypnosis, it's that sort of thing. There's a lot of that in the hypnosis community. It's often an NLP, getting what you want, persuading people, can be quite like businessy sometimes, as well as the therapeutic stuff. But it's all the same information, no matter what you're learning it. It's the same if you condense it down, and all of it can be perverted. I don't think you can ever stop learning hypnosis. It's one of those skills that you can always be refining it, always be finding different people's strategies, always appreciating what other people are doing with language and touch and technique. I'd like to do a course that would prepare me to be a hypnotherapist, even if I never go down that route. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. When I was a young kind of teen, I wanted to be a therapist. And then I got really kinky. So like erotic hypnosis is sort of the perfect perfect field for me to enjoy. And there's quite a nice community of hypno-kinksters who talk about technique from a more anecdotal perspective, because a lot of the drawback of hypnosis research is that it's very limited in its scope, and the way that it's carried out is very particular because of that boundary drawing that you get. So for example, people who are hypnotized for studies are often just read at from a script with nothing visual going on, nothing tactile going on. They're just all given the same script, and then from that script they're treated as either like hypnotizable or not hypnotizable, which is not the experience of people in the hypno-kink scene, or I mean if you read more broadly in the therapy scene. People are very different in the way that they can go into trance, but we're all going into trance all the time, every day, and it's just a case of finding the way that works best for that mind in front of you.
Can you define trance for me?
Can I define trance? That's a really interesting question. Hypnosis hasn't really been understood as one thing or defined. I can give you a definition that I work with, which a trance state is essentially a state of focused attention, but also relaxed. So you could say that it's a common thing that's said in the community. You go into trance all the time, like when you're driving a car, for example, and you're not really thinking about where you're going, you're just driving, and your mind's somewhere else. You're sort of attentive to the task, but you're not really thinking about anything, and you're just sort of autopiloting through it in a relaxed kind of way. That's a trance. Or when you find yourself just staring out of the window sometimes and watching a cloud and there's no particular thoughts in your head. That's the kind of time that you could use to induce a trance state, because you're kind of in a light trance anyway. And even back in the, 18th century, when people were first looking at hypnosis, trying to understand what it was, noticing that when people stare at a candle, they go kind of zoned out, was part of what led to people wanting to experiment with those states. But what hypnosis is, there are different definitions. There's the definition that it's a unique brain state, something to do with theta waves in your mind, and that it's an altered state of consciousness, just like sleeping would be, but very different to sleep. It's not the same as sleep, that's been established. And then there's another way of looking at hypnosis, that it's more about an expectation on your behaviour, which changes your perception. So you're kind of going along with something, which makes it sound like it's fake. But it's not that you're faking it, it's just that the way that you expect something to happen massively influences the way that you experience that thing. So for example, there's a study where if you're given 2 glasses of wine, one was an expensive wine and one was a cheap wine, they experienced the expensive wine as better, tasted better, enjoyed it more. That wasn't because that wine was better, it was the same wine, but because they expected it to be better, they experienced it as different. Likewise with human memory, there are so many studies that if you, drop a few comments in that lead someone toward a certain expectation, like, what colour was the car, even if there wasn't a car in the memory, they'll come up with a colour, because that's how humans think. We think based on expectations, and we only perceive a tiny bit of all the information that we're getting at any time. So you can mess with that. You can use that and you can play with that. And it's amazing the things you can start to do once you understand how easily influenced people are and how creative your own mind can be. It's great.
Could you give me an example of a scene you've done as a top that you really enjoyed?
One example. Let's see. Not too long ago, I'd been working with someone who we'd been doing a lot of orgasm control, and they'd been given mantras to help them keep from orgasming. Good toys don't come, for example. And they'd been denied for quite a while, and I was like, okay, you've been doing really well in your denial, you're allowed to fuck me. And I made it so that essentially his cock went entirely numb, and he was just fucking me and fucking me and fucking me. And I was having orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, while he was just muttering this mantra over and over again, good toys don't come, good toys don't come, while he was fucking me. And I was like, this is bliss. That was a good scene. Because the control in that was, palpable, tangible control. Everything about him at that point felt like I controlled it. I controlled his body, his something as innate as whether he orgasms or not had been taken from him by me. And it was visible on his face how in that mental state he was while that thing was happening. He was barely there. He was there, obviously, and he'd consented to everything and we'd discussed it beforehand. But the fact that it felt to both of us in that moment that he had no power and no control over what was happening was very nice. My pleasure was his pleasure, and his mind was obliging me and serving me by stepping into this headspace where his body existed to please me beyond anything, which was lovely. And to feel, especially after you've been denied, orgasm control is just a big love of mine. There's a biological imperative, like you should be orgasming because you haven't in a long time, and if you have that much stimulation then you should ejaculate, but he wasn't, because his mind was in this state of control and focused attention on me. That's a real high, it's a real head high, it's a real mind fuck actually, which is nice.
A little bit mucky.
A little bit mucky. It's because they're so close to my dirty face.